Everyone, welcome to another CEO slash founder wisdom podcast, VC edition. Today with us, we have Amit Grover. He is founding partner and CEO at Grover Impact Ventures and Grover and Company. So Amit, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about your companies?
Sure. So predominantly, Charles, thank you for having me on the podcast. I essentially run two lines of businesses. My first company is Grover and Company that I founded in 2008 that specializes in advising companies how to develop intellectual property and how to monetize that intellectual property through licensing and different frameworks on IP protection, depending on the country that they're trying to export the IP to. So that's something that I started, after a very long career in the corporate sector. And I saw a gap where smaller companies, in Australia, New Zealand, could not access the knowledge that big companies have who can probably hire the world's largest consultants. And I personally found IP as a very smart and intelligent method of exporting your goods and services rather than producing the product in-house and shipping your product all the way across the country and then generating demand and everything that comes with selling a product. Also, one of the big reasons why I'm a big advocate of IP is it naturally helps you be very ESG compliant. So think about a scenario that you're producing a product in, let's say, Australia and selling it in India. Now, obviously, you are generating a lot of carbon emissions as you ship the product across to India, number one. Number two, you might say that Australia is clean and green and we are very sustainable, but that does nothing to an Indian customer that you're selling to. So what you do in Australia is of no consequence to an Indian consumer living in India. And number three, you are not helping the business ecosystem in any way by shipping the product across. I personally find that when I started, most people are not talking about ESG, but exporting an IP or a technology would mean naturally producing the product locally, sourcing the raw materials locally, and distributing the product locally, which would create employment, which is obviously the social side of ESG. That will create a lot of economic activity within that country or that region or that state, which is again in terms of economic empowerment. And obviously you're saving all that carbon emissions. That is the E part of the ESG. So I found that method both very cost effective, very efficient, as well as very compliant with the value systems of Australia. And I started this. So long story short, we've been running this for a good time now, about 15 years and going. And we operate in New Zealand, Australia, Dubai, Singapore, and London. And yes, we've worked with over 400 companies in our journey. And we continue to move and make improvements in this line of work as we learn more from various projects in various markets. We've worked with over 23 different industries and in over 44 countries. So we've got the kind of knowledge base in that business. The second line of businesses that I got into in 2020 was an extension of my consulting business with venture capital funds. So I'm a part of a few venture capital funds and LP. So I run a climate tech fund out of Europe. That specializes in basically two areas. One is climate change and the other is food security. So the whole ambition is finding the right companies with the right technology in food and climate and helping them build a minimum viable product that can be licensed. Obviously, IP and licensing is something we understand very well. So we're just trying to use that knowledge by putting investment in companies and then commercializing them. The second venture capital fund I'm involved in is in Singapore, which is a fintech project. We are focused on the Bangladesh and the Sri Lanka market because we see a lot of growth there. So the idea is to bootstrap early stage ventures with investment in our knowledge and help them sell their services both on the enterprise side and the customer side to banking corporations in those countries. So that's a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey.
Got it. It's quite interesting. I see a bunch of cool industries behind you. So plant-based protein, cellular agriculture, dairy investment, plant-based food manufacturing, and plant-based distribution. Can you tell us about these industries? Which one is trendy right now? Which one are you bullish in?
So when I started the journey, there was a lot of talk about plant-based. In the pandemic, what's really happened is people got scared because, people were catching the COVID. And, at some stage, there was a lot of focus on health. And because of that, a lot of people started flocking towards more sustainable and more healthy forms of food. So plant-based protein and plant-based dairy have been around before the pandemic, but it really took off when people started connecting the benefits of eating plant-based with the situation people were tackling with the COVID everywhere. And, which really doesn't have any connection, honestly, Charles. But anyway, fair psychosis works very differently in the market. So a lot of growth we saw in the plant-based derivatives, whether it was the plant-based proteins, so chicken, beef, fish, getting manufactured from plant-based sources, or it was the dairy side of it. So ice creams, yogurts, butters, cheeses, and obviously different milks that was getting manufactured. So there was a lot of growth and a lot of hype that people saw in the plant-based sector. So like everybody, I started investing in these sectors as well and working with companies to grow them. But soon after a year and a half, I figured out that it was merely a trend that at least I personally, this is my personal opinion, nothing to do with what's out there in the market. I personally saw that more of a trend where most companies were struggling to meet sales figures. The product itself for most of the companies were not both qualified on taste and texture and price. So, companies still have a long way to go to nail the taste. It's a food product, Charles. If it doesn't taste well, people are not going to buy it. So number one, taste. Number two, price is also a very big aspect of the plant-based industry trying to level with the meat or the dairy alternatives that's available. So I think, by and large, what I saw is firstly, let's get this myth out of the way. Most plant-based foods that you see in supermarkets, whether on the dairy side or the protein side, is processed food. Nobody has ever got healthy eating processed food, number one. If you want to get healthy, eat whole-based, plant-based whole foods. Number two, the price of plant proteins or plant dairy is really on a large scale, doesn't match the dairy and protein. So that was a huge barrier. And number three, which is I think the biggest out of them all, is the taste. I mean, when you drink these plant-based milks or eat plant-based cheeses or consume plant-based yogurt or have plant-based chicken or plant-based beef or plant-based bacon or plant-based any other thing that they're trying to sell, it doesn't taste anything like that. It doesn't even taste good, at least to me and my team of people who test these products. So I think what we are seeing right now is the magic kind of disappearing. On the business side, we haven't seen divestitures, we haven't seen acquisitions, we haven't seen very successful IPOs of multiple companies. Yes, there's talks about Beyond and Oatly and Impossible, but these are just 3 companies out of millions out there. So it's not really gone very good for investors. I don't see a lot of investors who come and say, oh, we've made crazy money in 4 or 5 years. It's been amazing run. I haven't seen that happen. So my intake is there's going to be a lot of course correction in the plant-based sector. Many companies are going to fall off the radar. Some are going to remain, absolutely. And I'm going to follow the trend as well. I am trying to direct more of my investments and time towards food security, that is looking at technologies that are solving the food security problem at a very mass scale. Everybody can't start eating plants, mate. It's not possible. We are trying to save deforestation. The more plants you grow, the more land you need. So, I mean, I think, from that perspective, our course as a company is going to be very focused on food security and climate change, which means we are going to bootstrap technologies in agriculture, technologies in food, that whether dairy or non-dairy, whether animal protein or non-animal protein, makes it more sustainable, makes it cheaper, makes it more accessible, and solves the food security problems of the world. Yeah.
And how do you produce a whole-based food with plants that is healthy? Because we've seen various products. I have a client that I'm signing up. He sells Hawaiian coffee, macadamia nuts, and honey. So these are like first grade ingredients, first grade quality, and yeah, they're whole, And when I start mixing all that kind of crap together and put up an Impossible burger, which sounds cool on paper, it's a good branding, but feed it to people, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that they become quite unhealthy. Vegans also have deficiency in many vitamins, including B12. How do you make such a food that first can scale, is brandable, and is healthy?
Look, I mean, the long story short is we need to kind of understand the difference between whole foods and understand the difference between processed foods. Now, processed foods are put together with preservatives and emulsifiers that helps you preserve the product on the shelf because it's going to be sold in supermarkets and in through the distribution chains. So most of these plant-based products that you're seeing in shops, take the example of Impossible Beyond and many other products like that, they go through a processing technology that uses a lot of soy, which uses a lot of other forms of ingredients, compressed and delivered in a way that aims to give you a texture and taste of meat, but it really doesn't. Number one. Number two, yes, you are absolutely correct. It doesn't give you the kind of nutrition that an animal protein would give you because the genetic components of animals are designed with a certain profile that plants don't have. There's a difference between plants and animals, and the difference will always be there. I'm yet to come across a technology that solves that purpose. Really, I mean, it doesn't exist as of now. So if you're looking at deficiency of B12 and deficiency of certain proteins, that's always going to be the case. Like vegetarians struggle to get the same protein profile through vegetarian sources when they're bodybuilding. There have obviously been talks about whey protein versus pea protein when you're working out in a gym and which is more effective. The process of delivering the nutrition from the protein in your body that a animal protein gives you, plant protein hasn't cracked that, and that's the God's honest truth, no matter what they say out there. So that problem is still there. To counter that problem, people are taking multivitamins, people are taking supplements so that they are not deficient in certain minerals and vitamins that they need to survive. As far as whole foods are concerned, we need to understand the difference. A whole foods is freshly cooked foods and vegetables. So if you buy vegetables from the market or chickpeas or lentils from the market and make a soup out of it and make rice and make a vegetable curry or a vegetable saute, that's whole foods. You're taking basic ingredients, cutting, chopping, and cooking it yourself using spices and oils and other seasonings. And that process of cooking fresh food with fresh ingredients every day is called whole foods. That is 100 or million times healthier than trying to eat processed food out of a packet. So processed food gives you that convenience that you don't have to really go through that whole process. It's very quick to do everything. And there's a price to pay for being quick. So that's the difference. But in a nutshell, what you were saying, we are still quite far away from solving the nutrition problem that animal protein delivers to the body versus a plant protein does. Yeah.
Got it. All right. And to finish up, what company did you invested in? What is the usual size of check that you cut for these companies? And what's your goal this year? How many companies do you want to invest in?
So to be very honest, this year is like a very, very good year for me because the banking crisis is happening. We raised our fund and closed it early on. So we are one of those in a very unique situations where we don't need to raise more capital. We've got enough capital to deploy. So right now the valuations are falling because of the banking crisis, with SVB going down under, Credit Suisse going down under. It's just the start of the banking collapse. There's going to be more that we're going to see. So I think it's going to be a great time to buy into companies at a very attractive valuations and get more for your money. So that's number one. So the idea is to look at about 50 to 100 companies in different sectors this year. As far as what we've invested in, we've been quite aggressive on the fintech side. So we've invested in MintPay, Spearmint, we've invested in Hindler, many of these companies in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka that are solving the payment gateway problem through our fintech fund in Singapore. And we are going quite aggressive. We built the portfolio up to about 45 companies already this year, just this calendar year. And we wish to add another 50 to it. So that's kind of really going well. In terms of my climate tech side, we've been investing. I can't name the companies right now because of confidentiality reasons, but we've invested in companies that are finding solutions to replace styrofoam, which is an insulation, which is 100% biodegradable material. We've just signed a deal with an Israeli company that's producing hydrogen-based car battery and researching on hydrogen-based insulated products and hydrogen-based mobile phone battery and tablet batteries, because lithium is very polluting, as you know, both in electric vehicles as well as electronics. And finding a replacement for lithium, which is more biodegradable, much more natural, and much more ambient stable, is the entire world's research. research. So we are, bootstrapping research such as that. We are also kind of in early stages of talks with a couple of cellular agriculture companies that are taking cellular agriculture and merging it with plant-based ingredients and producing a far more sustainable plant-based or cellular agriculture-based product, which is the version 2.0. So of what's been there in cellular agriculture. So multiple projects out of Europe and Asia on multiple subjects of food security. So yes, it's going to be a very, very good year for us. Yes.
Well, that was quite insightful. Amit, where can people find out more about you?
I think the easiest way to find out about me and connect with me is LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. Very easy to kind of contact. So people can go on my LinkedIn, search for me and add me or send me a message. And generally I reply within 24 hours.
And that would be Amit Grover, Grover. Thank you, Amit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, May. Thank you, Charles.